How's it going, folks? Adam Brian Dada here with the Low Reward video series. For those of you who are visiting for the first time, please note that this is a stream of consciousness by me. There is no script, there is no major planning, no editing, no jump cuts, just straight through from start to finish. Sometimes I ramble a bit. The last video that I posted is important to segue into this one, and that was about how to kill boredom and find motivation. If you haven't watched that video yet, I would suggest you stop this video, watch that one, think about it for a night or two, and then come back to this one. My videos are not intended to be binged. I don't want anyone addicted to them. That's not the point. The point is to give you an alternate view of why we fail at becoming successes. Another thing to note is I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not looking for your money, and I don't need anything more than you to ponder what I'm saying and give me some comments below. I'd like to thank everybody who has done that so far in the first 7 videos. One of the private emails from the previous boredom and motivation video was a question about why depression, or in his case, anxiety, is so much stronger when we go from a period of boredom to a period of distraction. You're sitting around, don't really have much to do, you feel pretty bored, so you load up a video game or a porn video or junk food from the pantry. And then after that, you find yourself not in a place of boredom, but in a place of depression, or worse, anxiety. This topic, when it comes to the low reward ideology, mentality, and lifestyle, tends to be one of the most polarizing. I would say in my many famous arguments on the internet going back almost 30 years, this particular topic tends to anger the most people. And usually that's a good sign for me. I firmly believe that boredom is manufactured. It's neuro-engineered. There is probably no human reason for boredom to exist other than the fact that it's been created stronger than whatever paleological ancestral foundation brought it among the modern human action. So boredom, to me, made up, invented by people who are smarter than you and I, although I'm really good at engineering it in my customers. The same is true of anxiety and depression in the modern era. Now, there are people who truly are depressed and who truly do have anxiety, and maybe people who truly do have boredom, but they are in such a small minority that it would not be something that I think would define words. Meaning, if we actually took all the engineered bored people and all the engineered anxious people and all the engineered depressed people out of the count, the people remaining would be so rare that you wouldn't know the words boredom, depression, or anxiety. That attitude of mine makes a lot of people angry, people who are being treated for anxiety or depression or boredom. But in the decades I've been working on these theories, I've met many more people who have applied lower reward behaviors to part of their life and have come out realizing that those feelings were indeed engineered by people they didn't know and who didn't know them. Normally when I talk about low reward or high reward, I'm talking about dopamine, the neurotransmitter hormone in the brain that makes us feel good after performing a task, action, or behavior that leads to that success in the brain. In this case, though, I really want to talk more about the other mood hormone and neurotransmitter called serotonin. Serotonin is a much more complicated hormone. It is a mood stabilizer. It is a mood enhancer. Serotonin can regulate your appetite or your sex drive. Serotonin can regulate your desire to seek dopamine. It's only been in recent years that scientists and researchers have discovered the connection between serotonin and dopamine aren't about getting them both as high as possible, but more about a balance or ratio between the two. Anxiety especially seems to happen artificially when there's an imbalance between serotonin and dopamine. And if you go back 100 years, 200 years, 500 years, you don't really see anyone talking so much about anxiety and depression and boredom, because survival was more important then than some kid on the couch saying, "Mom, I feel bad about myself." The lower reward lifestyle has been successful for a great many people in combating boredom and anxiety and depression, because we don't sit on the couch anymore. I thought about that today. It's a Sunday here when I'm recording this. I just finished another run through my garage, which somehow gathers a lot of junk because a lot of people seem to donate to me stuff that I don't actually need. And after I spent 3 hours in the garage, I thought maybe I should go in and take a nap. But somebody, of course, sent me a message asking me to talk about their post high reward anxiety. And I realized this is a great segue into the triangle of connections that lead us to higher reward addictive behavior. And boredom, anxiety, and depression are a triangle for me. When I talk to people who need mentorship or guidance, when I talk to people who need help figuring out why they're not successful, or even successful people asking me why they're not more successful, I can usually write them on this triangle with the 3 points: ultimate boredom, ultimate anxiety, and ultimate depression, and they fall somewhere on the triangle. So it isn't that you can have the ultimate of all three. You can fall somewhere between all three. When we look at serotonin from a paleological perspective, it also helps us drive towards survival. That's the reason dopamine exists. That's the reason serotonin exists. For the 10,000, 100,000 millennia years that humans have been evolving to the point that we're at today, the vast majority of it, minus a couple of thousand years, the vast majority of it has to do with letting us survive, and unfortunately, letting our competitors or enemies not survive. It's driven by making sure that we procreate our survival genes and that our weaker opponents don't. So for the vast majority of human existence, serotonin is the balance of the mood that drives survival. And dopamine is the reward for the behaviors that let us survive. Eating, procreating, finding shelter, outrunning an opponent or a predator. All of these things would reward us by releasing dopamine into the brain, giving us that happy feeling. Today, we don't really do any of those things. You can hook up with a partner with a click of a button and a couple of shots of alcohol. It's not like it was before, where we were looking for partners who had the attributes we wanted to see in our offspring. With food, you're not out looking to hunt an animal that may very well be trying to either hunt you back or scamper away. We can open up the pantry. We can click a button on our apps and have food delivered sometimes as fast as 10, 15 minutes. Survival is no longer a problem. If you're watching this, you have no competitors trying to prevent you from living another day. It doesn't happen anymore. Even in the worst parts of the world, survival is generally guaranteed for the vast majority. including the poorest cities and countries. And that's something to think about with serotonin. When we don't have survival as a fear, serotonin is one of those odd hormone neurotransmitters that doesn't make a lot of sense in its existence. Serotonin is there to balance out our moods. But the moods are there to generate desire to survive and be the winning of competitors. When we have too much serotonin, we now have an imbalance against dopamine. And that's one of the recently discovered roots of the artificial anxiety that so many people have. Think about what anxiety is like in nature. I am going to go and hunt that animal, and I'm anxious because that animal could kill me, or it could run away, or maybe I'll come back with nothing and I haven't eaten in 3 days and I'll have expended energy. So when you're looking at anxiety from a human nature perspective, do we really have that anymore? How about anxiety in mating? We are competing with other men in the wild who can hunt, provide food, shelter, strength, no obvious genetic flaws. And we're competing for a partner who can raise our offspring. Meaning now we won't have just ourselves to take care of, but a minimum of one other person and possibly more. And the anxiety is there are other competitors out there that we will be obviously competing with, maybe to the death, or maybe just to prove that we can acquire survival. Anxiety has a natural foundation, but because survival is no longer an issue, we don't really feel true anxiety. The same is true with depression. Depression is a short-term emotional response to failure. It's acute. We go out, we hunt, we don't bring anything back, we feel bad. We were hoping to catch that animal and bring home meat for our new mate and offspring, and we have nothing. Had we brought back the kill, we would feel great because the body would reward us for good action with all that dopamine, which is way less than you would get from watching this video. Because hunting prey and bringing it back is very, very low reward. But we don't have that anymore. So the depression we have today isn't because we're failing at our desire to survive. Even if we're homeless, even if we're penniless, even if we have nothing to our name, we still survive. It's easy today because we live in an abundant society. Even if you live in a country where everyone is poor, you still live in an abundant society compared to, say, 1,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, when the foundations of serotonin and dopamine were being created. As a consumer, you're constantly hit with these artificial emotions: music, TV, porn, gambling, food, movies, if I hadn't said it, fashion, what color car you own, what color your refrigerator is, stainless steel or black stainless steel. We're hit with these artificial emotions all the time, which mimic the response in the brain that survival used to, that success used to, that conquest used to. But we don't have those anymore. So as humans, we're being programmed by our advertisers, by our brands, by the media, by our educators, even by our addict parents, the sports teams we follow, the political parties we cheer on, or the political parties we angrily hate. These emotions are pushed into us because we no longer have a reason to feel anxiety or depression. And people who are much smarter than me and much smarter than you have been studying human action for a very long time. We don't study depression or anxiety as scientists or researchers in order to cure it. That is a myth. we study it in order to create more of it in the customer base. And every single brand out there, even the most charitable organization that's giving 5% to pink ribbons, is thinking every day, what do we do to make the customer want us again? And the way you get someone to come back to you is by creating a victim who is anxious about losing you, a victim who is depressed that you'll go away. That trilogy of boredom, anxiety, and depression that I first talked about is going to be a common path in the low reward video series. We're going to be talking about a lot of these 3 points for many things. One of the common ones that people will remember from my old Reddit posts or videos that are now long gone is that potato chip. The raw potato, not so good. A tablespoon of salt by itself, not so good. 2 cups of oil in a glass, pretty disgusting. You put those 3 things together though, and you have a potato chip that you can't stop eating. Everything in the low reward mindset that I've researched for many years now comes down to these weird triple coincidences, maybe triple variables, where you merge 3 things together and you end up with a consumer addictive habit. Serotonin is one of the 3 by itself. On its own, not so exciting. But serotonin and dopamine, plus one of the many other neurotransmitters out there, can help you understand why you're acting negatively, why your emotions are so beaten down, why you feel so miserable. And on the flip side, understanding the balance between serotonin and dopamine, when you look at how happy other people are, how successful other people are, how joyful other people are, when you start to understand the balance between serotonin and dopamine as we progress through this series, you'll start seeing that those people who are sharing their hot bodies on Instagram or their new possessions that they've acquired on Facebook or dancing drunkenly to their favorite song on TikTok, those people may not be happy at all. They're just sharing a tiny piece of their day, boosting that dopamine, boosting that serotonin, and giving themselves that imbalance. They're not videotaping the time when they're coming down from that high. And the people who are posting about their anxiety or posting their poems about their depression may also be consumer-minded, hedonist addicts who aren't willing to look deeper into why we act the way we act. It's my goal in coming videos to individually look at each behavior, hedonistic activity that consumers like you and I enjoy, and to discuss how they affect your success, how they affect your comfort, and how they affect your contentment going forward. I know this video didn't give you a lot to go on, but it's an important video for me because I've had this discussion thousands of times, and I've never once thought to record it on video as an introduction to the next step, which is going to be how do we balance dopamine and serotonin from a healthy paleological ancestral perspective without making life utterly boredom. My name is Adam Brian Dada, and this is the Low Reward Video Series.